Today, we're playing Mighty Morphin Power Rangers. Now, don't get it mixed up. We're not playing Mighty Morphin Power Rangers the movie, the game. And we're not playing Mighty Morphin Power Rangers Fighting Edition. Although this game does have fighting in it, so it's a bit weird. But yeah, today we are playing Mighty Morphin Power Rangers. Now, this is another game that I have really fond memories of playing as a kid. If you remember from my Mortal Kombat video, I mentioned playing that game at my parents' friend's house. This is another game that I played at that house all the time. I really looked forward to going there to play this game. I really love this game so much. I was awful at it though, especially as a kid. I just couldn't even get past the second level. So today I'm actually really looking forward to seeing what the rest of the game looks like. If you grew up in the early to mid 90s like I did, then there's a good chance you're a fan of Power Rangers, or at the very least you would have heard of them. But something you might not realise if you're only ever a casual fan like I was, is that for the first series, Mighty Morphin Power Rangers, the fight scenes were actually comprised of footage taken from a Japanese show called Super Sentai, or more specifically the 1992 Super Sentai series Kyoryu Sentai Zyuranger. Sorry if I butchered that, which I'm sure I did. When I was a kid, it felt like Power Rangers were everywhere. It was inescapable. There was the TV series, of course, but not just one series. Oh no, as of today, there have been 21 different themed Power Ranger series that spanned over 29 seasons. There have only been 3 movies released to date though, one recently in 2017 and the other 2 were released in 1995 and 1997, which I loved those ones, especially the 95 movie with Ivan Ooze. He was the coolest bad guy ever. While writing this, I also found out it was actually filmed only a few hours from me, over in Sydney, which is pretty cool. But not only was there movies and TV series out the wazoo, but there were also more toys than you could ever possibly imagine. Shelves of toy stores were just lined with different Power Ranger toys as far as the eye could see. There were also a number of comics being released about the series in the mid-90s, and right through till today they're still being released. But most importantly, there were video games. There have been a lot of Power Ranger video games released over the years, including 3 on the Super Nintendo alone. Today's topic is the first of those releases. Developed by Natsume and published by Bandai, Mighty Morphin Power Rangers was released in November of 1994 in North America and PAL regions, and November of 1995 in Japan. The game came out to somewhat mixed reviews, with some reviewers stating that the game was far too easy for experienced players and criticizing its dull level design, while others stated just the opposite, saying it was a mighty tough game as well as praising the fluid animation and controls, as well as their subtle attention to detail. I myself stand somewhere in the middle, but we can talk more about that later. The story leaves a lot to be desired, which isn't that unusual for a licensed Super Nintendo game to be fair. All we really get is an opening cutscene of the Rangers walking along when suddenly the sky turns red, the city in the distance is engulfed in flames, and Rita Repulsa appears in the sky with this really dumb look on her face. Then the game starts. Mighty Morphin Power Rangers is your typical side-scrolling beat-em-up, but unlike other games such as Turtles in Time or Final Fight, you can't move closer or further from the camera. You're stuck only going left and right in this game. Some people may not have been a fan of this, but personally, it never really bothered me. The game's been designed around only having that one plane of movement, and I think it does it quite well. Before starting a stage, you get the opportunity to select your character from any of the 5 original Rangers. You have Jason the Red Ranger, Zack the Black Ranger, whose name is actually spelt wrong in the game, Billy the Blue Ranger, Trini the Yellow Ranger, or Kimberly the Pink Ranger. The game is relatively short, consisting of only 7 levels, 5 beat-em-up style levels, and 2 1v1 fighting stages where you get to play as Megazord, which is cool as hell. The game uses a password system instead of saves, and when I was a kid, I used to just put in the passwords to the Megazord fights and play them over and over and over and over again. So much fun. The first half of each standard level you play as whichever character you've chosen in their normal form. Once you reach the halfway point, you morph into their Ranger form, and now you can fight using the character's signature weapon, as well as having a one-off screen clearing attack which can be replenished by picking up a bomb item. Interestingly, this game actually utilizes the same game engine as a game called The Ninja Warriors, so you might notice some similarities if you've played both games before. I've never played The Ninja Warriors myself, but after finding this out, I'm kinda looking forward to it. I don't hear a lot of people talk about this game's soundtrack really, but I think it deserves to be mentioned up there with some of the greats from the Super Nintendo. It's just so good. I especially love the track for the first level. I swear it's been permanently stuck in my head since I first played this game as a kid. The soundtrack was composed by the team of The soundtrack was composed by the team of Iku Mizutani, who was the main composer for Natsume, and Kinuyo Yamashita, who's best known for her work on the Castlevania soundtrack, which was also her first work on any video game composition, which is kind of cool. I think that's enough of an overview. Let's get on with the recap, shall we? I started out the playthrough by picking Jason, the Red Ranger. Obviously. I swear he was every young boy's favourite back in the day. Like I said, I'd already played through this once off stream, so I knew what to expect, and I knew that I liked playing as either Jason or Kimberly. The way they fought felt more comfortable to me, whereas Billy, Zack, and Trini to a lesser extent all felt a bit slower and more difficult to play as. The first level starts us out in the city and we're immediately ambushed by putties, which are really Repulsa's henchmen. There are different coloured ones to signify how strong they are. First off, we had to fight some grey ones, the weakest of the lot. They go down in a couple of hits. Not long after though, a few purple putties smashed through a shop window and attacked. They're a bit stronger, but they still don't take a lot to put down. Halfway through the level, we're stopped by a skeleton with a pretty sick fedora and cape combo. He pops in looking all menacing, and Jason morphs into his ranger form. Just as quickly as he appeared, the skeleton was gone again. Now that we're in our ranger form, we fight with our signature weapon. In Jason's case, it's his sword. Now we were fighting our way through a park. I love the fact that you can throw park benches at enemies, always makes me laugh. Soon after, 3 putties come flying in on the back of a ute and the ute crashes into a wall and explodes. Luckily this must have been some sort of magic self-driving ute since there was no driver in there. As with any good beat 'em up, we also get to smash up some cars. The first level was quite short and easy. Before long we were up to the first boss fight of the game. That snazzy skeleton from before. Now this fight was definitely not easy, but nothing too crazy. When you attack him, he jumps backwards to try and dodge your attacks, and then he'll either swing his sword and make a big burst of wind come out to hit you, or he pulls back his sword and goes for a big lunge. My strategy here was to just jump up and swing, jump up and swing. Constant jumping makes it easier to avoid being hit. After a while, he explodes into a big pile of bones, just leaving his head floating there. But then, most of his body manages to reform somehow, excluding his arms, and then he hops around for a while trying to kick you. After a few more hits, his body exploded again, leaving him as just a floating head. In this form, he can shoot fireballs at you, or just try and ram you. We didn't really get to see any of this though, because I used the bomb attack and just took him out in one shot. Level 2 starts out in the park again. I decided I want to play as Kimberly this time to mix things up a bit. The second screen is outside of some sort of industrial building, and we're ambushed by 2 black putties holding shields. These guys take a while to take out, and they knocked me down to about half health. I only made it through a couple more screens before I was taken out by a green putty. I'd taken way too much damage at this point and I was not being careful enough. So back to the start of the level, and I only had 1 life left now. Well, 1 extra life I guess, because you get another shot once your life counter reaches 0. As soon as I respawned at the start of the level, the stream chat started getting flooded by sex bots, so that was fun. And oh, go away! Why am I getting sex bots in the chat? Hired user. I don't know how to do this. This is all new to me. The reason the start of this level is so tricky is you're flooded by a bunch of enemies at once, and you have to be really careful to jump over these rolling barrels at the same time, leading to a lot of accidental damage being taken. At least by me anyway. Halfway through this level, just outside the door to the factory, we're stopped by this level's boss, who I always used to think was a pig, but it's actually a guy called Gnarly Gnome. We morphed into our ranger form and Gnarly Gnome disappeared. For some reason, when you play as Kimberly, her signature weapon is a bow. Sometimes you can make her shoot an arrow, but most of the time she just smacks people around with the actual bow, which is really funny to me. Inside the factory we get our first taste of platforming for this game, having to climb up on higher ledges while avoiding spiky machinery. Platforming doesn't feel the greatest, but it's not terrible. The thing with the platforming sections in this level is if you get hit by the machinery, there's a really good chance it's going to knock you off the edge and then you fall all the way back to the start, which is a real pain. There's not a lot more to say about the rest of the level. I dodged some falling pipes, fought a bunch of putties, and before I knew it, I was at the end of the level facing off against Gnarly Gnome and his rake, which is an interesting choice of weapon. He constantly teleports around the room and will either swing his rake at you or shoot energy beams out from his sides at you. I managed to find a sort of safe spot I could hit him where he teleported close, but he didn't seem to be able to actually hit me, so of course I took full advantage of that. After a while he changes into his second phase, where he teleports around far more rapidly. At this point, my safe spot no longer seemed to work, so I just did my best to dodge him, and once I thought he was low enough on health, I used my bomb move, and that took him out. Level 3 starts us out in the sewers, and I decided to go back to playing as Jason for this level. This level changes things up a bit. You walk along the path, but there's also gaps in the path where you have to jump down to the water below. It's much easier to hit the enemies when you're in the water since they're also in the water, so they're lower down. If you're on the above path, it's often really hard to actually hit them. But when you're in the water, occasionally an electrified bit of scrap metal or something like that will float past and you need to dodge it or hit it to blow it up. This level also introduces sections that you need to quickly crawl through while enemies chase you from behind, just to mix things up a bit. It also introduces the worst part of the game, the swimming sections. There is rising and falling water, and when it gets too high, you start swimming, but you can't fight back while you're swimming. Of course, the enemies can still attack you though while you swim, so you have to dodge until the water level lowers again and you're able to attack. These bits are pretty tough and it's easy to rack up the damage. After struggling through some annoying swimming sections, I made it through the boss of this level, very creatively named Eye Guy. He's just a bunch of eyeballs stuck together in the shape of a guy. I do like his design though actually, it is pretty cool. He has 3 attacks. He'll either shoot a laser out of his main giant eye, which you can then do both standing up or ducking down. He also throws little eyeballs at you that you need to dodge, and lastly, he can lie down, curl up into a ball and then just flies directly at you, really fast. And it's quite tough to dodge actually. After you take him down to half health, he turns into his second form, which is just a flying eyeball with tentacles that floats around and tries and slams into you. I use my bomb at this point and managed to take him out. Level 4 starts us out in the under construction skyscraper. As always, halfway through the level we turn into our ranger form and we're introduced to the boss of the level. Just after this, there's a section on an elevator where you need to dodge a bunch of projectiles and big electric barriers. It's a pretty easy section. Then right after that is a big platforming section where you need to climb higher up the building. This bit was pretty tricky. Right near the end of the level there's a fight with a flying robot who floats around shooting projectiles at you. This was really tough actually. It kept flying below me and shooting up at me. But from that position it was impossible for me to hit it, so I just had to keep dodging for ages. Eventually though it did come back up to where I was able to hit it and I blew it up after a few hits. Now on to the boss fight. I think this might actually be the hardest boss fight in the entire game. This guy's name is Genie. Very creative. He starts out by shooting knives at you that you need to dodge. There are 2 platforms above the floor so you can jump up to them to help with your dodging. This basically boils down to dodge his attacks and try and get 1 or 2 hits off before he teleports to the other side. His second attack was dropping a row of fireballs from above, a bit of a hard one to dodge if you're not quick to react. Next up he has 3 lightning monsters, I guess, one at the height of each platform. He starts with the bottom one and then goes up, shooting one at a time, so you just need to jump up higher and higher, then jump over that top one, and you should be able to dodge this without getting hit pretty easily. The knives are the hardest ones to dodge for me. I managed to dodge for a while and get some hits in, even letting off my bomb attack, but it was no use. I died pretty quickly. Lucky for me though, when you die in a boss fight, you're just sent back to the start of the boss fight. My second attempt went far better. I still took a bunch of damage, but I managed to finish him off with me being just under half health at the end. On to the last side-scrolling beat-em-up level, the Cave Hideout. It starts out pretty standard, the only difference between this and some of the other levels being that the enemies are much tougher, and we get some putties coming at us with a sword, but overall it's pretty easy. Once we morph, there's some more fighting putties, but now we need to avoid rolling barrels and robots flying above shooting lasers. It gets pretty hard. There was a lot going on all at the same time. Towards the end of the level, the difficulty ramps up when you need to fight off a lot of enemies, while every 5 to 10 seconds jumping down into a crevice and ducking under this gigantic laser that kills you in one hit if you don't dodge it in time. It is very amusing though when the enemies don't know to duck and they just get destroyed by the laser. Once you reach the end though, you need to destroy the laser yourself, which is pretty easy. Just after that, I got taken out by a turret on the ceiling. Unlucky for me, that was my last life, so I had to start the whole level again. Thankfully the game has password system as I mentioned, so it's not like I had to start the entire game again, just that level. I'm trying my best to avoid using save states and just playing the game as they were intended to be played, at least as much as possible. My second run through of the level was much more successful. I made it through to the boss without losing a life, although I was pretty close to death by this point. This boss fight is against Dark Warrior, a camo-clad ninja with a sword, who, according to the Power Rangers wiki, is in fact a frog monster. Dark Warrior constantly jumps all around the place. He barely stays still for a second, and occasionally he'll jump into the air and drop a bomb on your head, or he'll throw down a smoke bomb and teleport to the other side of the screen. He very quickly took me out though, since I was already so low on health. This fight's not too tough. It's a slow and steady fight though. He doesn't attack too frequently, but he dodges so often, so it takes a long time to knock him out. Once you knock him down to half health, he starts throwing shurikens at you, which you just need to jump over. Pretty easy. Slowly I managed to whittle away his health, and I eventually did manage to beat him. With that, we got to hear the awesome Super Nintendo rendition of the Go-Go Power Rangers song as all the Rangers morph together into the legendary Megazord. The first fighting level is against the zombie monster Mutitus, who honestly looks way cooler in the show than in the game. In these sections, it almost feels like a Street Fighter game. You can use the 4 face buttons to attack, hold back to block high, or down and back to low block. The main difference is you also have a meter that slowly builds up on the bottom of the screen. Depending how full the meter is, you can push a button to let off a special attack. The fuller the meter, the stronger the attack. My first attempt did not go well. I died very quickly. The Attempt number 2 went far better. I saved up all my power meter until it was totally full, and then I shot my special move and did a massive chunk of damage to take the win. The final level is against Cyclopsis, one of the evil Zords, and considered to be the toughest enemy the Power Rangers had to face in the original Mighty Morphin Power Rangers series. He's actually really easy to take out though. I did it only getting hit a few times. But that's not actually where the fight ends. Once you take him down in his silver form, he comes back in his gold form. His gold form is so much tougher, he does heaps of damage and blocks far more frequently. Somehow though, I got really lucky and I managed to take him out on my first attempt. When I played this game off stream, it took me like 5 or 6 tries. It was really hard, so I guess I just got lucky. And that's it, game complete. At the end, we're treated to a final cutscene where the whole crew are driving along a beachside road in their red convertible, driving off into the sunset. Now roll credits. During the credits, we're treated to some sick dance moves by Zack while the gang hangs out at the bar. Then, right at the end, we see Rita in the sky again. Dramatic. At the end, you also get given some more passwords that allow us to play the levels again, but in hard mode, something I've got absolutely no interest in doing. Beating the Mighty Morphin Power Rangers took me roughly 1 hour and 18 minutes, not a bad effort if I do say so myself. So how does Mighty Morphin Power Rangers hold up today? Is this the kind of licensed game you can play without being a fan of the original source material? Hell yes you can, this game definitely holds up. Sure, it might be a little bit easy for some of you real gamers, but for someone like me who's just pretty okay at games, it's really fun and enough of a challenge. Plus, it's got an amazing soundtrack to boot. For the gameplay, I rate it a 6.5 out of 10. For someone who doesn't really like beat 'em ups, I actually had a really fun time with this game. It's not too challenging to the point of frustration like a lot of games in the genre are for me, but it's not so easy that it's like a baby game, you know? The controls are responsive and smooth, and only being able to go from left to right rather than having full 3D control scheme may seem like a downside to some, but to me, I saw it as a positive, allowing me to focus more on chaining good combos, without having to worry about getting a swift kick in the back of the head by someone I didn't see coming from the background. The music honestly deserves a 7.5 out of 10 in my books. I don't remember what I gave Donkey Kong Country or Yoshi's Island at this point, it's been a while since I made those videos, but I'm guessing I rated them 8 or higher. And honestly, I feel like this is pretty close at times, but definitely does not deserve to be put on the same level as those absolute masterpieces. I know this is partially nostalgia talking, but to me, these tracks kick ass so hard. I really love them. If you grew up listening to the opening theme to Mighty Morphin Power Rangers with those insane guitar riffs, you'll know what I'm talking about. They translate surprisingly well to the Super Nintendo sound chip. The sound designers did an amazing job with this one. It's a soundtrack that I put on from time to time when I need a bit of a pick-me-up. I'm rambling at this point, but you know, it's just really good. The graphics are probably around a 6 for me, I'd say. They're pretty decent, but there's nothing that really stands out about them to me. Nothing looks bad by any means, but there are so many games on the Super Nintendo that just look absolutely amazing, and this game's just kind of mid in comparison. They did a great job with the source material they had, but I think I need to dock at least half a point because they used the same morph sprite for all the characters, just changing the colour. Regardless of the character's gender, height, weight, whatever, they all looked exactly the same. Although I'm sure it was done just to save space, it does feel a little odd having Kimberly morph into this huge jacked ranger based off Jason's sprite. Let me know if you think that's a bit rough and it doesn't actually deserve to be docked points for that. So overall, I give Mighty Morphin Power Rangers a 7 out of 10. Now to some of you that may seem a little bit high for what is widely considered to be a pretty average game, but I just really enjoyed it. If you like beat 'em ups or Power Rangers, give this game a shot, seriously. It can be beaten pretty easily in just over an hour and it is a really good time. Alright, thank you guys so much for watching the video, I hope you enjoyed it and thanks for sticking around till the end. Maybe it's inspired you to pick up the game and give it a shot for yourself. Or maybe go back and watch the original Power Rangers series. I know that's what I want to do after making this video. If you like the video, it'd mean a lot to me if you could hit that like button. It takes half a second and it really helps out my channel. I'm trying to grow the channel, make it a bit bigger, get a bigger audience, and, you know, these little things like liking and subscribing really does help. So now, what you've all been waiting for, what game are we playing next? Next up, we are playing the legendary Aladdin. Somehow I had never played this game before my stream. I had missed a complete gem of a game. I'll let you know right now, it is definitely worth a play and definitely worth a watch. Thank you guys so much again for watching and I'll see you guys in the next episode. Have an amazing day. Oh god, I am exhausted. I'm glad that is over.
Good job, boy. Now get going. You've got more work to do.
No, I am done. I can't keep doing this. I was almost crushed by a giant robot earlier today when I got here.
You're done when I say you're done, boy.
But
Enough. Go.